the most recent president that is mostly loved by Americans on both sides of the political spectrum. He enjoyed several birthday skydives up in Maine, yet he is seen as an ineffective president. However, today I will go in detail on the 3 major aspects of his time in office, as well as one little bonus fact at the end, so stick around for that. But before we go further, please subscribe to the channel, as it is the very best way to support the hard work I do for these videos. If you've already done so, thank you, and this is the first video that I've recorded since reaching the 100 subscriber mark, and I truly cannot thank you guys enough. Now let's jump into it. One of the defining moments of the George H.W. Bush presidency was his leadership during the end of the Cold War. When Bush took office in 1989, tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union were already easing, but the future was uncertain. Rather than acting aggressively, Bush chose a careful and diplomatic approach, maintaining strong U.S. power while encouraging reform in Eastern Europe. He supported the reunification of Germany and helped guide the transition as Soviet control over Eastern Europe collapsed. His patience and restraint helped avoid chaos or violent conflict during this fragile time. The fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 and the eventual collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 symbolized the peaceful conclusion of decades of rivalry. Bush's handling of this period showed his understanding of global diplomacy and stability. Many historians credit his leadership with helping the world move safely from an area of nuclear tension into one of cooperation and peace. At home, he faced serious economic difficulties that damaged his popularity. After inheriting a large federal deficit from the Reagan years, Bush promised no new taxes during his campaign, a pledge that helped him win the presidency. However, when the economy slowed and the deficit continued to grow, Bush was forced to compromise with Congress and raise taxes. This decision, though responsible in the long term, angered many of his conservative supporters. Unemployment rose, and by the early 1990s, the country had entered a mild recession. Critics argue that Bush seemed out of touch with the struggles of ordinary Americans. His approval ratings, which had once soared after foreign policy successes, began to drop sharply. The economy ultimately played a major role in his 1992 election loss to Bill Clinton, showing how domestic concerns can outweigh foreign policy achievements. Despite the economic troubles, Bush achieved significant progress on the social and environmental issues. In 1990, he signed the Americans with Disabilities Act, one of the most important civil rights laws in U.S. history. The ADA prohibited discrimination against people with disabilities in employment, public accommodations, and government services. Bush called it a landmark step forward for all Americans, showing his belief in compassion and fairness. He also passed the Clean Air Act amendments of 1990, which strengthened air pollution standards and addressed problems like acid rain and toxic emissions. These policies demonstrated that Bush could act pragmatically and build bipartisan support for meaningful reform. The most defining moment of Bush's presidency was his handling of the Gulf War in 1990 and 91. When Iraq's dictator Saddam Hussein invaded the small nation of Kuwait, Bush immediately condemned the aggression and built a powerful international coalition to stop it. Rather than acting alone, he worked through the United Nations and gathered support from allies around the world, including many Arab nations. Operation Desert Storm, the military campaign to liberate Kuwait, was swift and decisive, ending in just over a month with minimal U.S. casualties. Bush's leadership during the war restored American confidence after difficulties in Vietnam, and they showed the effectiveness of careful diplomacy combined with military strength. His decision not to invade Iraq itself also showed restraint and respect for international goals. The victory made Bush one of the most popular presidents in modern history, at least temporarily. The Gulf War marked the start of a new era in global politics and established the United States as the sole superpower of the Cold War's end. Bush was the first incumbent vice president since Martin Van Buren to win a presidential election. He was the Veep for Reagan, who was perhaps the most consequential recent president. Click here to learn more about him.